Are you sick of these yet? Doing it anyway. YOLO. Alright, it is time to talk about my favorite books that I read in 2012. These aren't gonna be like my top 12 books that were released in 2012, they're just going to be the top 12 books that I read in 2012 because I read 4 books in 2012 that were actually released in 2012 and 3 of them were graphic novels based on Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, I'm not gonna rank them because I don't want to. I'm just gonna show them to you chronologically by date that I read them. I am only going to talk about each book briefly because I don't want this video to be ridiculously long. But if I did an individual video review for that book, I will annotate it and put a link down in the box. First up is Paper Towns by John Green, which I'm not going to talk about like at all because everyone has already read this. It's good, moving on. Next is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Because obviously. Again, I don't really want to talk about that one very much because everyone has read it. It's amazing. It made me not hate books about cancer. A+ John Green. Next we have The Daughter of Time by Josephine. I read a whole lot of mysteries this year and this was easily the best one. This was published in the early 1950s and it is set in a contemporary setting. And it's all about a detective who is laid up in the hospital and he's incredibly bored. So he devotes all of his time to trying to figure out what actually happened with Richard III and the Princes in the Tower. And it's awesome. I read it in a sitting. I definitely need to check out some more Josephine because that was rad. Next up, The Demon's Lexicon by Rees Brennan. This is the first book in a trilogy about brothers who are caught up with demons. I was gonna say hunt, but they don't so much hunt them as they are on the run from them. Like, they can kill a demon if necessary, but that's not really their jam. And I don't know why more people haven't read this. It is like criminally underrated. And I can't wait to finish up the trilogy and read more by Rees Brennan, because she's awesome. Next is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is an alternative history novel about England during the Napoleonic War, and it's basically like straight historical fiction with a dash of what if there had been magic? And it reads very much like if Charles Dickens or Jane Austen wrote a fantasy novel. It's really good, and also the BBC just announced like a month ago that they are adapting it into a miniseries, which I'm super excited about, so you will want to read this pretty soon so you can be a book hipster about it. No, for real, pretty soon everybody is going to be talking about this, so get on the bandwagon. Next up is Slouching Toward Bethlehem by Joan Didion. This is easily the best nonfiction that I read this year. This is a collection of essays that Joan Didion wrote about the West Coast during the 1960s. I believe they were mostly originally articles for magazines and newspapers. And the subject matter is really interesting, but what I love most about these essays is Joan Didion's actual prose. Like, there's something almost cold about it. Like, it feels like there's a certain emotional distance, but like, it will also cut you to the bone. It's a very interesting mix of logic and emotion. I really like it. Next is The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. This is a really good modern take on Gothic novels. And what I think is really great about this one is that it works like just on a level of being really creepy and gripping and entertaining, but there's also something deeper and more character-driven happening there. It's very satisfying. Next up is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. Words of a Reader actually had this on her list of favorites for this year too. This is all about a group of schoolgirls and their relationship with their favorite teacher and with each other, and about how easy it is for children to be led astray by adults. And it does that thing that I love and I'm totally susceptible to, where it will give you like little tantalizing details about what happens in the future and then it won't explain it for a couple of chapters. Oh, I love that. It's great. And also it's just really compelling and beautifully written. I definitely recommend it. Next is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This is such an underrated Austen. I don't know, perhaps it's not as deep as her other works, but it's so much fun to read. This one is also very gothic-y, which I'm realizing is a genre that I really like. I'm kind of a wuss, so I only like to be scared to a certain extent. So gothic novels are perfect for that because they're basically like horror light. Next is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. This is plotty and fun and the writing is really lovely, but I don't even have to tell you any of that because this is like the easiest sell to book people ever because stories about stories. Yeah, you're adding that to your wish list right now, aren't you? Next up is Batwoman Elegy by Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams III, which I do not have a copy of because I had borrowed it from a friend. But I should really buy my own copy and the subsequent trades in this series because, oh, it's so good. This is just so well written and the characters are so well crafted and the art is beautiful. This was definitely the best graphic novel that I read this year. And finally, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. I am just gonna link to my review of this and not really talk about it because the review is pretty extensive, but this is probably the best thing that I read this year. It's so good. So there we go, my favorite 12 books that I read in 2012. Here is hoping that 2013 will be just as awesome. Alright, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.